How's it going, everyone? It's me, Lone, and when Fallout 76 was first announced and the gameplay was dropped, people noticed one thing. There were super mutants in the game. So a lot of people went to ask the question, well, why are there super mutants in the game? More specifically, was this consistent with the lore of Fallout? And I thought, you know what, this would make a great topic for a video, so let's answer that specific question. And of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear your theories about this and also what you think about mine. Let me know if I've made any mistakes. And also as well, bear in mind, a lot of the information that I'm talking about is directly referenced from the Fallout wiki. So that's linked in the description below. Please go support the wiki. It's honestly so important for us creators on YouTube. So let's start with some background into Fallout super mutants and go from there. As most of you know, super mutants in Fallout were created as a result of exposure to the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV. There are three kinds of super mutants in Fallout. Those that were first created by the Master in the Mariposa military base in New California, who are otherwise known as the West Coast super mutants. And then there are the East Coast super mutants, which includes both those created by the Institute in Fallout 4's Commonwealth, and also those in Vault 87 in the DC region of Fallout 3. Now, for the purposes of this video, we'll be focusing on the super mutants that were created in Vault 87. Their creation was due to Vault-Tec and the US government as part of the Vault Experimentation Program. For Vault 87, it was dubbed the Evolutionary Experimentation Program, where the residents would be exposed to the FEV, although this wasn't a regular version of the FEV. In fact, it was a modified strain that would cause the super mutants created to become stronger and larger over time. These super mutants are also less intelligent than the other variants on the West Coast, but they're not so dumb to not have a purpose. In fact, these super mutants were smart enough to be able to take humans captive, bring them back to Vault 87, and expose them to more of the FEV strain still found in the vault to create even more super mutants. This is why there are so many of them in Fallout 3, because there was no way that the inhabitants of the initial vault would be able to support such a large population size. But this still begs the question, how exactly are there super mutants in Fallout 76? Obviously, there's no way that the super mutants on the West Coast made their way to West Virginia, and the setting of Fallout 4's Commonwealth, which included the state of Massachusetts, is also much too far away from West Virginia. In fact, in our world, from West Virginia to Massachusetts, it's about 220 hours of constant walking. So in real time, it'd be actually much longer than that, although bearing in mind that of course the world of Fallout is much more shrunken down than our world, but still suffice it to say, it would be a very, very long time, and definitely really impractical and too far of a stretch. So now we're only really left with two options here to explain the presence of super mutants in Fallout 76. Let's start with the first one. Perhaps it is possible that the super mutants that appear in Fallout 76 also originate from Vault 87 in Fallout 3, especially given the relatively close proximity of DC to West Virginia. In our world, it would take approximately over 80 hours of constant walking to make it to West Virginia from DC. So with rests and sleep, let's say perhaps 8 hours for every 10 hours of walking, then it would take someone about 150 hours to walk from DC to West Virginia, or about 6 to 7 days. So for simplicity, let's say about a week. And again, we still have to remember that the world of Fallout is much more shrunken down, even though it's still roughly based off of the larger map of the US. When we play the game, it's clear that these cities and states aren't to scale. After all, Fallout 76 is intending to shrink the entire state of West Virginia into one map. West Virginia is not that small by any stretch of the imagination. But for now, this guess of a week will have to do. So is it reasonable to assume that a segment of the super mutants created in Vault 87 actually migrated towards West Virginia? In my opinion, it's not completely out of the realms of possibility. There were literally hundreds if not thousands of them in Fallout 3, located all around the Capital Wasteland. It's possible that some decided to keep venturing on. They were indeed smart enough to take humans captive and make even more super mutants. And also, they were able to use weapons, wear armor, and effectively congregate their own army. So why wouldn't they be able to leave the Capital Wasteland in search of even more human captives? I mean, one of their goals in DC was to find even more sources of FEV to convert even more humans to super mutants. So perhaps they sent a detachment to other areas like West Virginia in pursuit of this aim. But this is where we need to talk about timing. Fallout 76 is set in the year 2102, so for this theory to be true, we need to confirm that the Vault 87 scientists were successful in creating functioning super mutants before this date. And then we need to assume that some of them managed to escape and there was enough time for them to make their way to West Virginia. Now I'm going to assume that the FEV test began sometime soon after the Great War, given that that was the Vault experiment, and there was absolutely nothing that I could find which suggested that the Vault scientists in 87 waited several years before they began to lock up residents and released the FEV into their chambers. So since the Great War was in 2077, the FEV experiments will likely have began roughly around that time, or perhaps a tad later if we're being generous, but certainly well before the year 2102. And unless it took the scientists that long to perfect the strain of FEV, these super mutants probably would have been created with enough time to allow some of them to escape and journey towards West Virginia. In fact, the conversion process from human to super mutant took about 2 weeks. It all really depends upon how long it took the scientists to get the FEV formula right, as many of those early test subjects actually died. Additionally, Vault 87 security had to frequently shoot and kill some of these super mutants due to them exhibiting severe anger. So who's to say some of them weren't actually successful in escaping? But here is when we run into some issues, although I think these can be overcome. The Fallout Wiki states that Vault 87 super mutants began to appear on the East Coast by about the year 2277, which is many years after the setting of Fallout 76. However, the wiki also states that it was in fact the East Coast Brotherhood of Steel that branded these monsters as super mutants after their experiences with them on the West Coast. So because the East Coast Brotherhood began to make their way from the West Coast to the East Coast starting in the year 2254, perhaps that is why the super mutants in the Capital Wasteland were only initially sighted in the year 2277, and indeed given the name of super mutant in the first place, because this was around the time that the Brotherhood of Steel began to really set up shop in DC. Moreover, the Fallout Wiki states that Vault 87 super mutants had began kidnapping humans and exposing them to the FEV inside the vault for nearly 200 years. This suggests that they had been doing so before the year 2102, and certainly well before they were allegedly first sighted in 2277. So to be honest, there was nothing that I could find that would suggest this theory is completely impossible. In fact, in my opinion, it's actually relatively plausible. So let me know what you think of this theory in the comments below. But let's cover the second alternative here, which I think we need to canvass. Bethesda, to explain the presence of super mutants in Fallout 76, could just make up their own lore. I mean, why couldn't they? Why couldn't they say that there was another lab or another vault in West Virginia that also experimented upon humans with the FEV to create super mutants? I mean, it happened in the Capital Wasteland with Vault 87, and also it happened in Fallout 4 with the Institute. Bethesda now owns Fallout, so they can create whatever lore they want, so long as it's relatively consistent with the past lore of Fallout. But even in this situation, I still don't believe it's completely inconsistent with the past lore of Fallout. Whether we consider the Vault 87 theory, or whether we consider the fact that Bethesda could just say, hey, there's another vault, there's another experiment, why not? Why couldn't this be possible either? So anyways, Wastelanders, that's all from me. As always, if you want to support me further, the link to my Twitch is in the description below. I'll be streaming this weekend too, so I'd love to see you there. And until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourself, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.